Okay, so today I would like to walk you through some questions as part of revision for macro. So first of all, let me share my screen on my iPad. So give me a while to share my screen on my iPad. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen right now. Okay. So today we are going to work on some practice as part of your revision. So the practice that I'm going to walk you through are mostly on calculations as well as graph drawing questions, which can be helpful for you as part of your revision. All right. So without further ado, let's get started with calculation question first. So I have provided you some calculation questions for you to practice as part of your revision. Okay, so that you can see whether if you can get the right answers or not. So let's start with this practice one over here first. Although I had already provided some of the answers, some of the final answers on the side of the questions, but let's work on it together with the workings, with the detailed workings, and also to talk about some potential questions that you may come across in your exams. So first of all, you will be given with the data, the scenario, the values. Okay, so you can see there's one paragraph over here with all the information. Okay, so usually this kind of question itself from A to F over here, as you can see on the screen right now, will carry like 20 marks already. Okay, so therefore, usually calculation questions are quite easy to score. So try not to make any careless mistake. Okay, make sure you do not do any careless mistakes so that at least you can score a calculation marks. Okay, so my advice for you is when you see the questions, you transfer all the data into your answer booklet first. Make sure you do not transfer wrongly. So for example, you transfer one by one, just like what I did at the bottom over here. You go to your answer booklet, open a new page, and then transfer all the data into your answer booklet. Bear in mind, do not make careless mistake. Okay, don't copy the values wrongly, because if the value is wrong, then the whole thing will be gone and you will lose a lot of marks already. So usually this is the part that at least weak students can score to at least a part to get score at least a pass. Okay, so first of all, autonomous consumption 50, investment 120, okay, government spending 100, transport payment 10, okay, and then autonomous tax is 50, and then exports is 25 and imports is 15, all expressed in the billion of dollars. And then MPC 0.6, income tax rate 0.3, and then import rate is 0.1. So you transfer all the details over here first into answer booklet. You write like this, and remember to make any mistake. Okay, so that's the first step. Okay, so what's next then? So now we can answer the questions already. So question A, consumption function. So let's work on it together. So let me write the answers here together with you. Okay, so first question A. Okay, first question A, consumption function. Okay, so C equals to A plus B Y. So we need to expand the Y, the disposable incomes minus the autonomous tax minus the induced tax plus transfer payment. Okay, then substitute the value in. Okay, substitute the value in. Make sure you don't make any mistake while doing your substitution and while you're doing your algebra. Okay, all these are like easy marks for you to score. Okay, so then we can expand it. Okay, so you can check your answer. You can try to pause the video first and then check your answers. Okay, so at the end, you will get 26 billion, okay, plus 0.42y. Okay, so that is for the consumption function. Okay, now moving on, AE function. So when they ask about function, then you remain your answer as a function. Then after that, followed by equilibrium real GDP. So let's put on it together. AE equals to consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. And when I say net export means exports minus imports minus induced imports. So substitute the value in that we calculated just now. Okay, so investment, government spending. Okay, exports minus imports, and then minus induced imports. Okay, so this one, we'll calculate and see. Okay, you will get this answer. Okay, then calculate equilibrium real GDP. Equilibrium means Y equals to AE. So Y equals to 256 plus 0.32Y. Move the Y to the left. Unknowns on one side. Okay, and unknowns on one side. Then comes 0.68Y equals to 256. So Y equals to, because when you bring 0.32Y to the left, it becomes minus 1 minus 0.32. Okay, so it becomes 0.68. Okay, then you divide. So you will get 376.47 billion. Okay, I put the unit there also, billion. Okay, B stands for billion, in case if you're wondering. I usually look into your figures, look into your values, so I'm not so concerned in terms of the unit over there. As long as your value is right, then it's not so much of a concern. Okay, now next question. Aggregate consumption and saving in terms of values. So this one is value. Remember, if I say function means you remain your answer as function. If I do not say it's a function, that means I'm referring to the value itself. Okay, so now you have all the data over here already, then you can calculate the value. Let's say I want to calculate the consumption value, aggregate consumption value, right? Consumption and saving. Okay, consumption value C equals to, just now what is my function for consumption? 26 plus 0.42Y, right? Okay, so I just substitute it. So 26 plus 0.42Y, right? So 26 plus 0.42Y. Now I know my Y, the value already. I know my value of Y. So I just substitute that in. Okay, then you will get the answers ready. So try and see. Okay, 184.12 billion. I round off to two decimal places. Up to you, two or three decimal places. Okay, and then saving function. How to find saving function? Still remember or not? You have two ways actually. One way is using the formula saving function equals to negative A plus SY. Okay, negative A, the autonomous consumption. Okay, and then S is so how do I find S? So to find S, remember we learned MPS equal to 1 minus MPC. So MPC here is 0.42. So 1 minus 0.42 is 0.58. Okay, so now you can put that in 0.58 times the value of Y. Okay, then you put that into your calculator. You will be able to get 192.35 billion. Okay. Okay. So 192.35 billion. Or another method, there's also another method. Or I can write another method. Or, okay, another method is I can just use the output. I use my total income output minus consumption. So total output is 376.47 minus 184.12. 184.12. Okay, so you try and see, you should be able to get the same answers, which is 192.35. Yeah, same. Okay, 192.35. 192.35 billion. Okay, you will be able to get the same answers. Okay. All right. Now, question E is multiplier, and then followed by government increase spending by 20 billion. Calculate the new real GDP. Okay. Okay, question E, multiplier. Make sure you don't make mistake in terms of the formula for the multiplier. Multiplier, okay, for this four sector economy, 1 over 1 minus B bracket 1 minus T plus M. Remember the bracket is somewhere in between here. Okay, remember the algebra rule. Do not make mistake. Usually students will make mistake in terms of the formula for multiplier. Okay, so 1 divided by 1 minus B. B is 0.6. Okay. 1 minus 0.6. Yeah. Okay. 1 minus 0.6. Okay. Bracket 1 minus 0.3 plus 0.1. Okay. So you put that into your calculator. Okay, you will be able to get 1.47. Now, take note one thing. Just now, when I use this MPC here, this MPC, I'm using this one based on the consumption function because after I expanded the formula, okay, I got this MPC for the consumption function. So therefore, if I wish to find the MPS over here, that's why I'm using this 0.42, okay, instead of the initial MPC, which is 0.6, because I expand already. From the initial 0.6, because after we form the consumption function, it changed, okay? So therefore, this is why just now when I look into the saving function, I will be taking 0.42 because we are using the new calculated MPC already. Okay, not the initial 0.6, just in case if you're confused. Okay. But when you calculate your multiplier, you are using back whatever that's being given in the question. The value that's being given in the question, 0.6, 0.3, and 0.1. Okay. Okay, question F. Okay, question F is government increase by 20 billion. Okay, calculate the new real GDP. Okay, government increase spending by 20 billion, calculate the new real GDP. Okay, you have two methods for you to work on this also. Okay, so both methods will give you the same answer as well. One of the method is, first you calculate the change in output first. The change in output equals to the multiplier times the change in government spending. Okay, so multiplier is 1.47, and then now it increased by 20 billion. Okay, so therefore the change in output will increase by how much? So 20 times 1.47 is 29.4, 29.4 billion. Okay, so that means output will increase by 20.4 billion. Okay, so now to find my new output equals to initial output plus the change in the output. So initial output is 376.47 plus the new increment of the output is 29.4. You add it up. Okay, and you will be able to get 405.87 billion. So that is the answer for this question. Okay, or there is another method as well. If you wish to try another method, if you're using another method, that's also fine, which is using the AE function. Okay, to find a new AE function. Okay, so at first my AE is my 256 plus 0.32y, right? Okay, so to find new AE function, I use the initial AE function plus the change in the injection. Okay, capital letter A means injection. So like for example, here there's an increase of government spending of 20 billion. So I will use, okay, plus 20. Okay, so at the end, you will get 276 plus 0.32y. Right? Okay, you will get this new AE first, and then using back the equilibrium methods, y equals to AE. Now you are calculating the new output. Okay, so y equals to 276 plus 0.32y. Move the y to the left hand side. Okay, you get 0.68y equals to 276. So y equals to how much? You will get the same answers. So you use 276 divided by 0.68, you will get 405.88. Yeah, same answers, lah. Just one decimal point different. Okay, so that is the answer for the first question. Very, very easy. I just want to test on your calculations. Okay. Now, let's say I would like to modify the question a bit. Let's say I would like you, so for question F, it says the government increased by 20 billion, right? Government spending increased by 20 billion. So you calculate the new real GDP. Now, let's say I would like you to show these impacts with the use of Keynesian income graph. So how it is going to be? So important value they're going to extract is the initial AE function and the new AE function, as well as the initial output and also the new outputs. Okay, so now let's draw the graph together to show the impacts of an increase of government spending by 20 billion. So let's work on the graph together. So the first graph that now that we're going to practice to draw is Keynesian income graph. Okay, Keynesian income graph. Okay, so how? So first of all, we have y-axis and x-axis. So we have y-axis, we have x-axis, okay, and we have origin, and we have this upward sloping curve 45 degrees, which indicates that the higher the outputs, the higher the aggregate expenditure. So on my y-axis over here is what we call as AE in the forms of billions of dollars. Okay, on the x-axis over here is my real GDP, or we call it as my output or my income over here, which is also expressed in the form of billions of dollars. And then at first we start with this point, with this AE curve over here first. So at first the AE is 256 plus 0.32y. Okay, 256 plus 0.32y. So that meaning to say that initially here is 256 here. This is my autonomous consumption. That means although I do not earn anything, but this is the amount of money that must be spent. Okay, that's independent. Okay, of the output, that is independent of the income. Okay, 256. So this is what I call as the autonomous expenditure. The expenditure that is independent. Okay, of the income or of the output of the country. Okay. Okay, so now this is the initial equilibrium at point A. So this is my initial equilibrium output, which is 376.47. Okay, 376.47. So here will also be 376.47. Okay, that's the initial equilibrium, the real GDP. Okay. Now, government spending increases. Okay. So now AE curve will shift upwards because of the increase of the government spending by 20 billion. Okay, so now I move this AE curve upwards. Okay, parallel. So now this is the new AE 276 plus 0.32y. Okay, so yeah, okay, so here what you can see over here is that there is an increase of government spending by 20 billion. Okay, so that's the impact. Okay, as shown in that question. So now the point move from point A, it move through, it shift upwards already to point A1 over here. So what happened is your output remain the same. Your output is still 376.47, but your AE increases already, right? You can see your AE increases already. Okay, but your output remain the same, right? But this amount over here increases already. Right, so therefore, what we can say over here is that AE is larger than the output and there is a shortage of the stock. So firms will start to hire more workers and to increase the employment and to produce more output. So this result in multiplier effects and resulting in higher equilibrium of real GDP, which is point B. So at point B over here, we reach the new equilibrium of the real GDP, which is the one that we calculated just now, 405.88. Okay, so 405.88. Okay, and here it also goes to 405.88. Okay, the equilibrium real GDP from the initial point A to point B, and in between over here, there's multiplier effects, and all is due to the increase of the government spending by 20 billion. So this is how the graph looks like if I were to show the impacts for the question F just now. Okay, so this is the graph. Okay, okay, so now we are done with the practice one. Okay, so now we can move on to the practice number two. Okay, so you can have a look into the practice two first. Okay, before we look into the question, before we look into the answers. So as usual, I will walk you through the detailed workings as well. So first thing, do the same like your practice one. You transfer all the data into your answer booklet first. Make sure you do not make any mistake. So like what I did here, I transfer all the data on the top here into my answer booklet. Do the same. Make sure you don't do any mistake. Double check when it comes to exam. Okay, you do that first. Then we are going to look into the questions. You can pause the video and then try to do it yourself first before you check your answers, before you check workings with the reference to this video. Okay, do the same first. Transfer the data. Okay, so now we are going to work on the questions together. Okay, so now question A, B, C, D are about the same. So consumption function, E function, equilibrium real income, and then multiplier. Okay, so let me just walk through it quickly with you. Question A, consumption function C equals to A plus B Y. So I expand the Y, income minus autonomous tax minus induced tax plus transfer payment. So do it quickly. Make sure in exam you do not make any mistake. Okay, so here in this question, there's no transfer payment, so you can just ignore lah. No transfer payment. Okay, then you expand the formula. Okay, so at the end, you will be able to get 28 billion plus 0.56y. Okay, then next question, question B, AE. Okay, use AE equals to aggregate demand, which equals to four components, C plus I plus G plus NX. And what do you mean by NX? NX over here means exports minus imports minus induced imports. Okay, so substitute the values in that we already had. Okay. Okay, then investment, government spending, add it up. Double check your values to make sure that you do not make any careless mistake. If not, it's a bit wasted because usually these kind of questions very, very easy to score. So try not to make any mistake. So, usually if you want, you can do the calculation question first. If not, if you leave it at the last part of questions to do, right? Sometimes you may run out of time and you may be panicked and you may easily make mistake. So you can do it first because it's easy to score. Okay, then after that, question C, equilibrium, y equals to AE, y equals to 478 plus 0.51, and then move the y to the left, which is 0.49y equals to 478, y equals to 478 divided by 0.49, you will get 975.51 billion. Okay. What's next? Multiplier. Multiplier, again, don't make mistake. Multiplier, this is for four sectors. So remember the formula, 1 minus B bracket 1 minus T plus M. In case you're wondering how all these formula are being derived, make sure you watch the video that I assigned you to watch that time when I was teaching you the Keynesian chapter. I prepared a video on how to derive all the formula and explain how all these formula are being derived. That'll be very helpful for you to explain, to know how all these formula are being derived so that you have an understanding, why the formula like that. Try to key in your calculator properly. And if you are not good in algebra, don't do it manually. When you calculate yourself manually, you might make mistake. Okay, so make sure you key in correctly into your calculator. At least when you key in correctly to your calculator, you will never make mistake. So we only put bracket in the between for that taxation part. Okay, so you will be able to get 2.04. That's the multiplier. Okay, now some tricky questions now. Question E, the federal budget deficit or surplus. So from here, we want to see whether the country is having budget deficit or budget surplus. So this is question E. Okay, quick recap in case if forgot already. Okay, let's say when I say budget deficit means what? Budget deficit means government spending way larger than taxation revenue, right? If I say budget surplus, you still remember? Budget surplus means government earns more from the tax revenue as compared to what they spend, right? If I say balance budget, that means what? Government spending equals to taxation. So we use the formula that we learned before. This is for question E, yeah? E. Okay, question E. Okay, to calculate the budget deficit or surplus, calculate the budget deficit or surplus, okay, we look into the two components. Okay, what are the two components? Government tax revenue, because when we look into government budget, we look into the two components, which is tax revenue and government spending or government expenditure. Okay, so what are the sources of tax revenue? Autonomous tax and induced tax. What about government spending? Government spending and transfer payment. So that's the formula. So we look into a difference between these two components over here. So autonomous tax is 60 plus 0.2y. Okay, government spending is 150, and there is no transfer payment over here. 0. Okay, so substitute the value in first. The value of y is 975.51. Okay, then use your calculator to derive the answers. So at least this question requires you to think a bit, which is good. You will be able to get 105.10 billion. Okay. So surplus or deficit. So when you want to determine whether it's surplus or deficit, you see this value, tax revenue and government spending. Which one is larger? Okay, you compare between these two components, tax revenue and government spending. So in this scenario, you can see that tax revenue is actually way larger than government spending, right? That's why you get the positive answers. So therefore, this is what we call as the surplus. Okay, surplus. Surplus of 105.1 billion. All right, and then next question, question F. Assume the full employment level is 950 billion. What is the gap? Okay, full employment 950. Okay, so this one very easy one. Okay, if my full employment is 950 billion, okay, what is my current output? My current output is only 975.51. Okay, so my output, the current output that we have here is 975.51. Okay, so you can see that here, okay, my current output is way larger than the full employment, the potential output. So remember we learned this before. This is what I call as inflationary gap. Okay, inflationary gap. Fair enough, because my actual output, the one that I'm actually producing at, is way larger than the full employment because this amount is larger than this amount. Okay, so definitely is a inflationary gap. But by how much? You look into a difference then. Okay, you look into a difference. So difference as in the difference between 975.51 minus 950. So at the end is 25.51 billion. Okay, so that's the answers. So that means here in this scenario, if the full employment is 950 billion, so here the answer is there will be an inflationary gap by 25.51 billion. As simple as that. You just do comparison. Very easy only. Okay. Then question G, how much spending should the country X government increase or decrease to eliminate the output gap? Let's say I want to bring the country back to the full employment. I don't want to have any inflation gap or recession gap. So how? So question G, we can use back the formula. The change in output equals to the multiplier times the change in the injection or the government spending over here. I want to reduce the inflation gap because the country is overproducing already beyond the full employment. So now I want to bring it back. I want to reduce. Reduce by how much? By 25.51 billion, right? So I want to reduce 25.51 and I know the multiplier is 2.04. From here, I can know how much government should increase or decrease the spending. So here, because I want to reduce, so therefore to reduce at the end, you will get a negative answers. So try and see what value will you get. 25.51 divided by 2.04, you will be able to get negative 12.51 billion. That means in this scenario, to reduce or to eliminate the output gap, or what we call as inflationary gap, government should decrease the spending. Okay, should decrease the government spending by how much? By 12.51 billion in order to bring the economy back to the full employment. So therefore, the answer is to decrease over here. And although the questions are being asked differently, but you can see that this formula over here is something that you used before already. If you still remember from the practice one, you use this formula somewhere else as well, which is here. We are using back the same methods. It's just that now we are using it for different purposes. So you used that formula before already. So just that today I twist the question a bit to test you. Okay, so therefore for this scenario, government should decrease the spending over here to bring the country back to the full employment. So that's the workings for these questions. Okay, hope you enjoy the calculation so far. Now moving on to the next question. Practice 3. Okay, also Keynesian calculation. This one I provided the answers for you already. I would like to leave it to you to do. Just that few things I want you to take note. Question B and C, if you are being asked like this, when you are being asked to calculate the multiplier, assuming imports do not depend on income. Do not depend on income means that there is no import component in the economy. So therefore, no import means 3 sector. So I'm using the multiplier for 3 sector economy. Do you still remember that? So for 3 sector, it's just that 1 over 1 minus B bracket 1 minus T. As simple as that, no imports. Okay, so therefore you can do that. I can do that straight away here already. 1 divided by 1 minus B. B is MPC 0.7. And then 1 minus 0.33. At the end, you will get the answers already. So this one very easy. It's just that students may be confused with the wording. Okay, so you will be able to get 1.88. Okay, 1.88. Now, if you are being asked to calculate the multiplier, assuming imports depend on the income, that means that there's income component, which we call as 4 sector economy. So then we use the multiplier for 4 sector. Don't forget the formula. A lot of students will forget the formula on that day itself because no formula sheet being provided for econs. Okay, so now you have the imports components. Okay, so now you substitute all the values in and calculate the multiplier again, and let's see what happens then. So MPC 0.7, tax rate 0.33, and then import rate is 0.1. So just do the simple maths only for algebra and remember to calculate using calculator and key in correctly so that you don't make any mistake by yourself. Okay, so 1.59. Okay, yeah, 1.59. So what can you observe over here from these two values over here? So do you realize one thing? When imports is being included from 3 sector to 4 sector, when this imports is being included, what happens to the value of the multiplier? It falls. The value of the multiplier falls. What does it mean then? There's a leakage. That means a portion of the money will be spent on imports. So therefore, this is not so good for the economy, isn't it? Because that's a leakage. Okay. So therefore, it will diminish the effectiveness of certain expansionary policies. Like for example, let's say if the government wish to stimulate the economy, government pump in money, government injects money, okay, would like to encourage people to spend more in the domestic economy. But if there's a leakage, then it will diminish the impacts of all these policies. Right? Now, this is the kind of theory question you may come across in these kind of calculation questions. When we talk about calculation questions, let's say 20 marks calculation or 40 marks calculation, it is not entirely calculations. There will definitely be theory questions. So this kind of theory question that you may be coming across, like, for example, they might ask you, what does this value mean? How come, when we switch from three sector to four sector and then the multiplier value falls, what is the rationale, and will it have any impact towards the policy itself? Yes, it will have impacts. When government implement expansionary fiscal policy or expansionary monetary policy, right? A certain amount of the money will be spent on imports, which is a leakage. So that will diminish the effectiveness of the policy itself. Okay, so therefore I can put some wordings over here. Okay, so you can see that I can put some wordings over here. When imports are included, the multiplier becomes smaller. The multiplier that we calculated just now becomes smaller. Why is that so? Because import is considered as a leakage. So that means a portion of the income will be spent on imports, reducing the amount of income circulating in the local economy itself. So therefore, the impact of any policies, any expansionary policy, especially let's say we talk about any expansionary expansionary policy that intends, let's say that intends to stimulate the aggregate demand or aggregate expenditure or total outputs, right, will be diminished, okay, which will reduce the effectiveness to some extent because a portion of the money, a portion of the income, okay, a portion of the injection is being spent on the imports. Okay, so this is some extra things over here which I want you to take note. Okay. So yeah, so we are done with three full Keynesian calculations already, which I believe that is going to be very helpful for you as part of your revision. Now we are going to move on to more graph drawing questions. Okay, so now I want to look into this practice 4. Okay, now I want to draw graph. Okay, so this question here with the use of diagram illustrate the impacts of US Central Bank conducts an expansionary monetary policy on the money market and ADS. You have a lot of graph to draw over here, and assuming economy starts at recessionary gap. Now, in case if the question does not provide you assumption, okay, you can do assumption also. Usually we assume like what we learned in the class. If let's say if we use expansionary policy if the country initially at recessionary gap, right? The country is in recessionary gap, so therefore government will use expansionary policy. The government will use contractionary fiscal or monetary policy, if initially at inflationary gap. Okay, the country is over booming, and therefore government will have to step in to slow down the economy over here. So this is something that you can assume if the question does not provide any assumption. Sometimes they might provide you some assumptions, let's say to start at full employment and so on. If not, maybe you can make assumption here. For expansionary, okay, we assume that the economy is starting from recessionary gap. Okay, that's why they need expansionary policy to boost the economy. Vice versa, if it's contractionary, okay, that means initially the economy starts from inflationary gap. So therefore, government would like to slow down the economy. Okay, so now this is expansionary over here. So we assume it starts from recessionary gap. Okay. Now I want to make the questions more challenging by adding up this question also. Assume the exchange rate is currently $1 equals to 4 ringgit 50 cent. Illustrate its potential impacts on US dollars and MYR with the use of relevant diagram. So what diagram we are going to use here is about exchange rate. So we are going to use exchange rate diagram. Okay. How are we going to interpret this quotation? We use what quotation? We use direct quotation, right? Which means how much ringgit Malaysia do I need for $1? So meaning to say 4 ringgit 50 cent per US dollars. That's how we interpret the direct quotations. Okay, so local currency on the left, foreign currency on the right. Okay, so therefore this is how we interpret, which we are going to put it as a unit when we label the graph. Okay, so you will have 4 graphs to draw at one shot together for this question over here. Very good practice. Okay, we will focus on graph drawing over here in this video, but when you write this, when you write in the exam, when you analyze in the exam, make sure you write your details as well. Okay, write the explanation as well. So I go to a new page, I draw the initial point first. So I have money market, investment curve, ADAS, and exchange rate. So like I say, we assume the country start from recessionary gap, right? Recessionary gap. Okay, so we start with recessionary gap. So you can see there's a recession gap over here. Okay, there's a recession gap over there. Okay, so this one will have 4 graphs in total because I want you to include the exchange rate. But in exam, if they do not ask you to relate to exchange rate, then no need to have the exchange rate. You will just need to have money market, investment curve, and ADS. These 3 are the common one. Is that I want to make it more challenging for you? I want you to input the I want you to insert the exchange rate graph for this question only. Okay, so it depends on the questions. Okay, so now we want to do what? What we are going to do? We want to do expansionary monetary policy. US implements this expansionary monetary policy, right? Okay, so what is the purpose of expansionary monetary policy? The purpose is to increase the aggregate demand, to stimulate the economy. How they do that? To increase the money supply and to reduce the interest rate. That's the purpose. We can be more specific with the instruments. Let's go to the details of the instruments because sometimes they might ask you to explain the details of the instruments. Instruments means the ways of how they achieve this expansionary monetary policy, okay, to achieve higher money supply and lower interest rate. What are the details of the instrument? Remember the mind map? I talked about the 3 details of the instrument, how they achieve that, right? So still remember now the first one, okay? The first one is through open market operation, the purchase and the sale of the government bonds. So we have central bank and we have the normal banks, commercial banks, or what we call as the people or the public. Okay, what should the central bank do then? Okay, so central bank will have to buy bonds, right? Central bank buy bonds from the commercial banks. So central bank will give them money. Okay, so central bank will give them money. Okay, so now banks will have money already. So more money supply. Okay, more borrowing, more loans to be given out. Okay, so that's one way through the buy, okay, through the purchase of the bonds by central bank from the commercial banks. Okay, so you see when central bank buy bonds, okay, then they give them money, so more money supply already. Okay, second instrument, reduce the bank rate. Bank rate also what we call as OPR, overnight policy rate. Okay, and third one is to reduce the cash reserve ratio. To reduce the cash reserve ratio. So every time when a person save the money in the banks, less portion of it to be saved as a reserve, so banks can loan it out more money to the people. Okay, so therefore they can reduce the cash reserve ratio. So less money to be kept as a reserve by the bank, so they can loan it out more money. Okay, so therefore these are the 3 instruments. So meaning to say today, if the question want you to, let's say the question asks you as a theory question, they ask you about the instruments. What are the instruments of expansionary monetary policy? You can be specific in terms of each of it. Okay, talk about the open market operations, talk about the bank rate, and talk about the cash reserve ratio. So these are the details of the instruments. Okay, you might need this for theory question. And here, because it's a big question with the graph drawing, so therefore you write that into your analysis as well. Okay, so now at the end here, yes, we talk about this result in higher money supply. Okay, so all these are part of your analysis also in this question. Okay, so therefore now money supply, okay, money supply will increase already. Okay, so we draw this. So you see, at first, my initial point, what you can see over here is that, okay, you can see at the initial interest rate with this amount of money, okay, with this amount of investment, producing this amount of output at this price level. Okay, that's the initial one. So now we are going to continue. Okay, now all this will result in higher money supply, right? We just learned here. Okay, higher money supply already. So you can see all the graphs are in sync of each other. Huh? So MS curve shift to the right from point A, it moved to point B over here. So money supply is more than money demand. So there is a surplus of money. Okay, surplus of money, which will drag down the interest rate to point C over here. Okay, lower interest rate. Okay, I can comment. I want you to comment about the asset demand for money. Okay, so in this scenario, let me draw it better. Okay, now my interest rate is lower already. What happened to the asset demand for money? When interest rate fall, what happened to the asset demand for money? It will goes up, right? This is to explain the movement along the money demand curve. Okay, when interest rate fall, asset demand for money goes up. Why? What is the rationale? What's the reason? Because the demand for old bonds, or what we call as the existing bonds, goes up. Everyone prefer to buy the old bonds because if you buy the new bonds, it follows the lower interest rate, which is not worthwhile. So everyone want to buy the old bonds. So because of the higher demand for old bonds, that result in higher asset demand for money. That means more people will want to hold more money in order for them to be able to take advantage of this investment. Okay, so this is why you can see that from point A to point C over here, there is an increase in the quantity of money. Okay, why? Because people want to buy the old bonds. Then when interest rate fall, old bonds become more worthwhile, so higher asset demand for money. Okay, so therefore, now lower interest rate already, continue. Okay, so continue, it will result in higher investment. Why, yeah? Why it will result in high investment? How do you explain this? How do you explain this? Lower interest rate, we comment about two things. Lower cost of borrowing, so that result in higher investment. Okay, and lower interest rate means lower returns of saving. So what happened is people will consume more, higher consumption, higher spending. People don't want to save money in banks because lower interest rate. Okay, so when interest rate becomes lower, what happened is lower cost of borrowing and lower returns of saving. So people to start spend more and invest more. So that explains the higher investment. And when these two increases, what will happen then? And these two increases, this will result in AD curve shifting rightwards. That's the next impact. Okay, AD curve will shift rightwards back to the full employment then. Okay, so AD curve from point A move to point B over here. There is a shortage. There's a shortage. And therefore, move the point to point C over here, resulting in higher price level, P1, and back to full employment. Okay? So therefore, you can explain the movement along over here. The movement along the AD curve can be explained by the real wealth, intertemporal, and international substitution effects. And the movement along the SAS curve can be explained using the sticky wages. So at the end, go to point C. Okay, so at the end, what is the impact over here then? You can see it result in higher price level and back to full employment. Okay, you can put that into part of your analysis. So at the end, you can see it result in lower interest rate at point C at this Q1 of money. Okay, with this amount of investment. Okay, with this amount of output at point C at this price level. So that's the outcome. Okay, that's the outcome. Now, for this question, because I want you to do additional questions by linking to exchange rate. So what are the impacts? So US does this expansionary monetary policy. You can see at the end, the result is lower interest rate, right? So we can link this to the capital flow of money, right? Interest rate. So US reduce the interest rate already. Okay. So US reduce the interest rate. What will happen then? So when US reduce the interest rate, so it will affect the capital flow of the money or the currency. So how? So lower interest rate in US. So what happened is the local people will not want to save money in the local banks anymore. They would like to save money in other country. Like for example, here we look into Ringgit Malaysia and US dollars. So we assume, let's say Malaysia offer higher interest rate. So US people might as well save their money in Malaysia if Malaysia offer higher interest rate because US already reduced the interest rate. Okay, so remember your graph drawing RM per US dollars. Okay, so whatever on the back over here, it will be on the x-axis over here. So therefore, y-axis and x-axis are about US dollars, then demand and supply are about US dollars. So at first is at point A. Okay, so therefore, US reduce the interest rate. Okay, US reduce the interest rate. So you can say that locals will prefer to save money other places in other countries with higher interest rate. Okay, locals will prefer to save money in other countries with higher interest rate. So this will result in higher supply of US dollars. Okay, increase supply of US dollars. Okay, so I can draw that. Increase supply of US dollars. Okay, so now go to point B over here already. Increase supply of US dollars. Okay. Then foreigners also do want to save money in US already, right? Because lower interest rate. Lower interest rate. I do want to save money in US already. So foreigners will also not save or will not save money in US. Okay. So because when interest rate becomes lower, it becomes unattractive already. Unattractive to unattractive to the locals and foreigners. Okay, unattractive to the locals and foreigners. Why? Because of the returns of saving. Okay, unattractive returns of saving. Okay, remember when interest rate becomes lower, that means it's really unattractive in terms of the returns of saving. Okay, so this one, it will result in lower demand for US dollars. Okay, so demand curve will shift left. Okay, go to point C over here. So back to this quantity. Okay, and then now it becomes 4.1. Okay, so what is the final outcome? Must talk about the final outcome. So the final outcome is Ringgit Malaysia. Now you use less Ringgit Malaysia to buy $1. So MYR appreciates. Okay, and US dollar depreciates. Explain. Okay, MYR appreciate because less Ringgit Malaysia is needed to buy $1, right? Because you can see less Ringgit Malaysia is needed to buy $1. Okay, US dollar depreciate because $1 can only get you 4 Ringgit 10 cent now. Last time can get 4 Ringgit 50 cent. So you can say that US dollar depreciate, meaning to say that more US dollar is needed to buy 1 Ringgit Malaysia. Okay, so that's the final outcome. Okay, explain a bit this final outcome. So Ringgit Malaysia appreciate, less Ringgit Malaysia is needed to buy $1. Okay, US dollar depreciate means more US dollar is needed, okay, to buy 1 ringgit Malaysia. Okay, so from here we can draw a conclusion also. We can say that when the country using expansionary monetary policy, okay, which includes the higher money supply and lower interest rate, it could result in what? It could result in the country having depreciation in their currency. Because here, US doing expansionary monetary policy. And that causes their currency, to depreciate. So if you are being asked with a question like which of the policy could result in the depreciation of the currency, you can comment about this. Expansionary monetary policy can result in the depreciation of the local currency itself. Okay, take note of that. Okay, so now we are done with this question. Let's say I would like to ask about theory question. I ask, so what's the impact of expansionary monetary policy on bond prices? Bond over here referring to the existing bond, or what we call as old bond. Let's say assuming this is a theory question, what you should write. Let's say I use the space over here to write. Okay, so how to answer this question? What's the impact of expansionary monetary policy on bond prices? So what you should write over here? So let's answer this question together. First one, talk about what is the expansionary monetary policy. The definition of expansionary monetary policy. So what's the explanation for expansionary monetary policy? You can say the intention is to boost aggregate demand, to stimulate the economy. Okay, to stimulate the economy by how? By increasing money supply and to reduce the interest rate. So at least the first sentence will explain what it means first. Okay? Now, because we talk about lower interest rate, now we can talk about the relationship between the interest rate and the price of bonds really. Remember the negative relationship, the inverse relationship, between the interest rate and the price of old bonds. When I say old bonds means existing bonds. Okay, we are answering the questions now. Okay, why? Because when interest rate goes down, means that the new bond will follow a lower interest rate. So we don't want that. We prefer old bonds. So higher demand for old bonds. So price of old bonds will increase. So you can see that negative relationship over here. Okay. So therefore, we expect a bit more details. Why? When interest rate fall, okay, what happened is new bonds will be unattractive. New bonds will be unattractive to people. Okay, so people will prefer old bonds. Okay, people will prefer old bonds, or what we call as existing bonds. Okay, so what happened is the demand for old bonds will increase. Remember with the graph that we drew last time, when the demand increase, price will go up. Okay, demand for old bonds increases, so that result in higher price of old bonds. That's the explanation. Okay, so when interest rate fall, new bonds are not attractive. People prefer old bonds, so that causes the demand to rise, and that result in higher prices. So that's the rationale behind this. Okay, so put that into sentences to explain this theory question. Now I would like to challenge you. What if today I change the question? Let's say now I erase all this. Okay, let's say now I erase all this. I change the question. US Central Bank conducts a contractionary monetary policy. Okay, assuming the economy starts at inflationary gap. And also, I still want you to challenge more. by having this additional question, assuming it starts with this, okay, what would be the impact on the exchange rate diagram? Try and see. Okay, you can take this as a challenge if you want to. So something to ponder upon so that your revision will not be too boring, so that you can think about this. How will your answers be? I didn't provide the answers, but this is something that you can mirror. When you answer the question, you can mirror the answers that we drew just now and draft your answers. That'll be very helpful for you to put what you learn into practice. Okay, so try to think about that as part of your revision. Okay, now we move on to next question. Just now, we talked about cash reserve ratio. This specific thing over here, I can ask it as a theory question as well. How? How? So let's say I ask a question like this. How the cash reserve ratio or the required reserve ratio as a monetary policy instrument, how it works? Okay, first you give definition. I expect you to give definition. That means that the percentage of money that the banks must hold in reserve and it cannot be loaned out. Okay, remember the story of Mr. A, B, and C save their money in banks. So if let's say the reserve ratio is 10%, that means 10% of the money must be kept in bank as a reserve. The rest only can be loaned out. So Mr. A put $100 in bank A. So bank A must keep $10. Then the rest of the $90 can be loaned out to Mr. B. Right? Remember the story of that? Okay, so remember the formula or not? Okay, second thing I want you to write the formula. Remember the formula. The money in the circulation equals to 1 divided by required reserve times deposits value. I say that, remember, this required reserve ratio will have an impact in the change of the money supply in the economy. For example, if at first the required reserve is 10%, which is 0.1, times the initial $100 that's being banked in by Mr. A, at the end, how much of money can be generated in the economy? So at the end, it will result in a total of $1,000 of money being circulated in the economy, because bank will only need to keep 10% of it. Okay, banks will only need to keep 10% of the deposit as reserve. So the rest can be loaned out. Bank A lend to Mr. B, Mr. B put money in Bank B, and Bank B lend to Mr. C, and continues like that. From the initial deposit, it creates multiplier effects, and it result in $1,000 in the circulation in the economy. Okay, so that's the formula. So give example of how it works. Like for example, during contractionary monetary policy, central bank will increase the required reserve ratio. They want the banks to hold more of reserve, so cannot loan out too much. So less funds available for the commercial banks to lend out. Okay, so therefore less money supply, shifting the money supply curve leftwards. So at the end, equilibrium quantity of money is reduced and interest rate will rise. Okay, you can show that by using a graph. Okay, so at the end, your MS curve will shift leftwards. At the end, it will result in higher interest rate. Okay, vice versa. That means today you can answer in a different perspective. Let's say today you do not want to talk about contractionary. You can also talk about expansionary. You explain from the perspective of expansionary monetary policy also can. Okay, so vice versa means that you can also explain from a different perspective. That means on the other hand, that means expansionary means central bank will reduce the cash reserve ratio. Okay, contractionary, they increase. Okay, so at the end, this will be the impact: lower money supply and higher interest rate. So this is how it works. Okay, as part of the monetary policy instrument. Okay, next question. Phillips curve. With the help of the diagram, analyze the impact of expansionary fiscal policy on both short run and long run impacts on Phillips curve. So this one, I will need you to link ADS with the use of Phillips curve. Okay, so both graph. Okay, expansionary fiscal policy, what is the purpose? To boost the economy by increasing aggregate demand through increase of government spending or reduce taxation. So same thing, even if I write the word increase government spending or reduce taxation, it will also have the same impact because it's part of expansionary fiscal policy. So what will be the short run impacts? So short run impacts. So therefore, all this will result in aggregate demand curve shifting rightwards, right? Now, when AD shift right, will there be any shift on PC curve? No. PC is only movement along. So when AD shift right, then this SLPC curve only movement along upwards. Okay, you see this point after the shift from AD to AD2 here. Okay, now this is a new point A1, and now this A1 here. Okay, movement only. Okay, movement only. Then after that, long run. Okay, long run impacts. How come it will shift another graph? Why? Because in the long run, you see here, in A1 over here, there's a inflationary gap, right? So inflationary gap means workers overwork. Okay, workers overwork. So we'll ask for higher wages, and wages are flexible in long run, no longer sticky wages, right? So therefore, higher wages, they ask for higher wages. Higher wages means what? Higher labor costs. So higher labor costs, what happen is it will result in less production. So SAS curve shift leftwards. So when SAS curve shift leftwards, what happened to the SLPC curve? The terbalik one, the reverse one, SLPC curve will shift rightwards. Okay, refer back to tutorial 6, right? Inflation and unemployment, the Phillips curve. That one I purposely made another video on that one today. So inflation and Phillips curve. Yeah. Okay. So when SAS curve shift leftwards, okay, then SLPC curve will shift rightwards. Okay. So at the end, it goes back to the point B, full employment. That means go back to the natural rate of unemployment. Okay. So higher price level, you can see here, that's why it results in higher inflation. So go back to point B over here. So this is why there's the impact. So therefore, you can see that from the expansionary fiscal policy, when you were to evaluate the short run and long run impacts, it will result in AD shifting right in the short run and PC curve only movement along for short run. And for long run, okay, workers ask for higher wages, that shift the SAS curve leftwards, and that caused the PC curve to shift to the right. Okay, so in the end, that's the answers. Now I want to challenge you. Okay, you must love a lot of challenge. Okay, so try and see if I change this question to contractionary fiscal or contractionary monetary policy, either one. Okay, what will be the answers then? What if today I change the question from expansionary to contractionary? What will be the answers? Is this a reversal? So that means AD curve will shift left in the short run and PC curve movement along. Then in the long run, okay, because there is a recessionary gap, then workers are desperate for jobs. They will take up whatever wages that's being offered to them. So therefore, SAS curve will shift right, okay, and SLPC will shift left. Try and see. Try and think about the answers. If let's say I change the question from expansionary to contractionary, try and see how the graph will look like. Okay, try and do it, draw it yourself to see if you can draw it correctly. Okay, so now let's move on to next question, exchange rate questions. Okay, so now with the use of a diagram under floating exchange rate system, illustrate the impacts of high import dependency of Malaysian towards US products. We keep importing US products, which will result in higher demand of US dollars. Assume local currency ringgit Malaysia and foreign currency US dollars. Starting point like this. And then under fixed exchange rate system, what will be the impact if central bank, Bank Negara Malaysia means the central bank, okay, wishes to fix the exchange rate back at this level? Now, I want to focus on graph drawing. The analysis you must write as detailed as possible, but today we focus on graph drawing. Okay, let's do question A first. Direct quotation, RM per US dollars, because they want us to do RM as local currency. US dollars is the foreign currency. Okay, so here will be quantity of US dollars. Why? Whatever here is here. So therefore, my demand and supply will be on US dollars. At first as point A. Okay. 4.5. Okay, that's the initial point. Okay, here, because Malaysian keep buying imports, so they will need to keep demanding US dollars. They already give you the answers here, very easy. So therefore, demand for US dollars increases from point A to point B over here. Higher quantity and now higher prices. So what can we say here for question A? What's the answers? MYR depreciates because more ringgit Malaysia is needed to buy $1 now, and US dollars appreciate because now $1 can get 4 ringgit 70 cent already. Okay, that's the answers under floating exchange rate system. Okay, as simple as that. All right, now question B. Under fixed exchange rate, what should central bank do if they want to bring it back to 4 ringgit 50 cent per US dollars? So how? What should central bank do? So you see, Malaysians keep supplying ringgit Malaysia to buy US dollars to buy the imports, right? So what should central bank do? Central bank should buy back. Buy back means what? Demand ringgit Malaysia by selling US dollars, right? Because too much of ringgit Malaysia is being supplied to the foreign exchange market to exchange for US dollars already. So central bank have to buy back. They have to buy back all the ringgit Malaysia that have been excessively supplied in the foreign exchange market. So they have to buy back. How they buy back? By selling US dollars. And which one are we drawing? Because this graph is all US dollars, right? So we draw this one. Selling US dollars. That means the supply of the US dollars will increase. Now, when this question is being asked together, when you were to show the graph, you can draw it separately. You draw it one more time and show the increase of the supply curve. Or you can continue on this graph. Up to you. As long as your answers are clear, then fine. Meaning to say, you can redraw this again for question B. So you redraw this again and then only shift the supply curve. Or you shift at the same graph also can. Depends on how you structure answers. Okay, for question B, let's say I do the answers together on the same graph. So supply of the US dollars increases. Okay, supply of the US dollars increases. So go back to the same 4 ringgit 50 cent per US dollars. So what is the impact? The impact go back point C, the Q2 over here. So back to 4 ringgit 50 cent per US dollars. So what's the outcome? Every time must remember to talk about the outcomes. Ringgit Malaysia revalue already. I will not use the word appreciate because here is under fixed exchange rate system. So that means it involves the it involved the government intervention. So remember, when we talk about intervention, we use revaluation and devaluation. Okay. And what about US dollars? US dollars depreciates here already because their $1 can only buy back the same as previously, 4.50 ringgit. Okay. So here, Ringgit Malaysia revalue already. Okay. Because central bank buy back the Ringgit Malaysia by selling US dollars. So usually you will have a questions on floating and one on fixed. Okay. Now next question. Again on exchange rate graph, a tax is imposed on Malaysian products. Illustrate with the use of exchange rate diagram the impacts from Ringgit Malaysia and US dollars under floating exchange rate system, assuming local currency is Ringgit Malaysia and foreign currency US dollars. Okay, how will the answers look like? Y-axis, x-axis, origin, direct quotation. How much Ringgit Malaysia do I need for $1? And here is quantity of US dollars. So both are about US dollars. So this is demand for US dollars and this is the supply of US dollars. At first is at point A. No starting point, so I can simply give a figures, 4.50 ringgit, for example, at this quantity. So that is the initial point. Okay, tax is imposed on products. So what will be the impacts? Tax will increase the cost. So producer will pass the cost in terms of higher prices. So Malaysian products become more expensive. So how? Two impacts here. Okay. So price of the Malaysian products go up. Okay. So price of Malaysian products go up. So how? Price of Malaysian products increases, more expensive. Expensive for foreigners, right? Expensive for foreigners. So foreigners will not buy already. Okay. Expensive for foreigners, less attractive. They don't want to buy already. They do want to buy, they do not want to buy the Malaysian products already. So how? So price of Malaysian products increase, so expensive for foreigners, less attractive to them, so they don't want to buy. So they will not supply so much of their currency to exchange for our currency anymore. So here we look into US, right? We compare US with Ringgit Malaysia. So since it's less attractive, so what happened is they will also not supply so much of US dollars to buy our products anymore. Okay, so therefore less attractive. So they will not buy the Malaysian products already. So therefore, the supply of US dollars will decrease. Okay. Second impact, okay, locals will find expensive also, will buy imports which are cheaper. Okay, locals will buy imports which are cheaper. Okay, so let's say they feel that US products are cheaper, so they will buy more US products. So the demand for US dollars will increase. Okay, so you have two impacts over here. Doesn't matter which one you draw first. At the end, at least you have these two impacts. One is demand for US dollars increase, supply of US dollars decreases. Okay, but usually in this scenario, the direct impact will be this one. When the tax is imposed on Malaysian products, right, it makes it more expensive. So locals will not buy their local products. They will buy imports instead, which are cheaper. So usually this one you will see this impact first. Okay, you will see this impact first, and then at the same time, foreigners also do want to buy, less attractive to them, so lower supply of US dollars. Okay, so doesn't matter which one you draw first. Let's say I want to draw, I want to draw the bottom one first because I feel that that is the primary impact. Okay, because I feel that it's more accurate to show this impact first, followed by this one. Okay, So I show demand for US dollars first. Demand for US dollars increases because local people will prefer to buy the imports now. So now what happened here is quantity increases and here become 4.7, for example. Okay, then supply decreases. Okay, supply decreases. I see here. Okay, so back to initial quantity and now become even higher. Okay, so what can you see? What can you observe over here? You see, it doesn't matter which one you draw first. At the end, you get the same outcome. Go back to, go to this point C. Okay, at $4.9 per US dollars at this quantity. So what does it mean then? Final outcome, Ringgit Malaysia depreciates and US dollar appreciates. Okay, so there's the outcome. Okay, now let's say I want to extend a bit the questions, give you some challenge. Okay, we talk about tax, right? Okay, I relate tax to exchange rate diagram. What if now I want to give you a question? Let's say I ask the question like this. If I ask you a question, a tax is imposed on producers or on a product. Relate this with the use of ADAS diagram. How will your answers be? Now I want you to do the simple one. Relate to ADAS. A tax is imposed. So what will be the answers? Pause the video and think about it. Tax. Which graph will shift? You do all the complicated one, then forgot the easy one already. Okay, tax increase the costs. So lower production. So therefore, SAS curve shift leftwards. Okay, tax on producers will shift SAS curve leftwards. Let's draw a graph. Now, assuming that I do not give you any assumption, let's say here, I can assume it start from full employment. Now you must be expert already doing all this graph drawing, like artist already. Okay, that is your initial point. Let me move this down a bit. Okay. SAS curve, shift leftwards. So from point A, it moved to point B over here. So what happened is there's a shortage. Okay, because aggregate demand is way larger than aggregate supply, right? Because now less production already, SAS go left already. So shortage will push up the price level to become higher, becomes point C over here. At the end, result in higher price and lower outputs. Okay, so higher price and lower outputs. That's the final outcomes. Remember to put that as your analysis. Okay, and at the end, you can see it result in risk-saturated gap as well. Okay, risk-saturated gap. That is risk-saturated gap as well. And remember, explain the movement along. To explain the movement from point A to point C on AD curve is real wealth and substitution effects. From point B to point C over here are sticky ridges. Explain it briefly. Okay, just say that because of all this effect, it can result in the movement along from point A to point C in the end. Okay, so at the end, result in recession gap with higher price level and lower output, right? So this is the impact of tax on ADS curve. Can I describe this situation? What are the keywords I can describe this situation? Higher price and lower output. What do you think? What words I can use? Stagflation, right? Because higher costs result in now higher price level, lower output with recession gap. That means there are some people being unemployed. Okay? I can also say it result in inflation, right? Higher price level means inflation. What kind of inflation? Be specific. Tell me what kind of inflation. I forgot that this is video recording. No one will answer me. Okay, it's cost push. Okay, cost push inflation. Okay, so I can relate to some keywords over here also. Interesting, huh? Now you can see we start to put all this into practice really. Okay, now I want to give you challenge. How to solve? What policy can we solve this? What policy can we solve this? If I want you to relate, okay, so let's say we talk about how to solve. What are the potential policy you can solve? Let's say I just want to solve this inflation. Now my focus is inflation, not so much on the recessionary gap. Okay. Now my focus is now the price level becomes higher already. Okay, price level becomes higher already. Okay, result in cost push inflation. My focus is inflation now. How to solve this inflation? Okay, if I just want to solve this inflation, I can use contractionary fiscal policy or contractionary monetary policy also can. Because you can see that when you use contractionary, when you draw the diagram, like the diagram that we drew just now, remember this one that we drew just now, you realize that at the end, the price level become lower if it's contractionary. So if my intention is just want to reduce the price, because now I've got inflation, I want to solve by reducing the price, I will use contractionary because these two will result in lower prices. Okay, but of course there's a risk. When you use all this contractionary, what happen is it will cause unemployment, less business opportunities, right? Because all this is to reduce aggregate demand. So they use the reduction of aggregate demand to solve this inflation, which have risk, okay, which will result in some risk because all this will result in further recessionary gap or further what we call as the unemployment. So there's a risk. So this is like some sort of arguments lah, okay? Like if you are doing assignment, this is something that you can comment about. But there's also a policy that you can talk about is supply side. You know, we can also use supply side to solve this inflation. Okay, supply side also possible. If you are doing assignment, you learn this from your assignment already. Supply side policy is actually quite good to solve this kind of scenario. It's just that supply side policies, the impacts are uncertain because it takes longer time to see the results and it involves a lot of money. Okay, now we talk about supply side. Okay, since we talk about supply side, interesting topic. Now let's talk about something different. Let's say I give you the challenge. Let's say I twist the question. A text. Okay, this text I change a bit. I do not want to ask text on producer. I ask you, let's say I challenge you a bit. Okay. Now I ask you tax cut. Okay, tax cut. Reducing tax. Government reduce tax to encourage more people to start up business and to become entrepreneurs. What do you think? What do you think will be the impact? I challenge you. Now I twist the question. What will be the impact? Hmm. So again, still a tax cut, but now the purpose is to start a business and to encourage people to become to become entrepreneurs. So the purpose over here is more of increasing the total output of the country, right? Or to increase the productive capacity of the economy. So it's actually more of supply side. So what kind of policy is this? Expansionary, supply side, but a bit of fiscal policy also. All right, especially supply side fiscal policy. Now, can you tell me, is this more towards market-oriented approach or interventionist approach? Don't forget, remember when we learn about supply side, we learn about it can be divided into market-oriented and interventionist approach. So tax cut, that means government doesn't spend anything. The government just cut the tax to encourage people to become entrepreneurs and do business. So it's more on market-oriented approach. How do I explain this? Check back the tutorial. Tutorial 5, supply side. Okay, don't forget about that. So you can see I can change the question a bit and the whole thing will be very different. Correct now. From the initial tax on producers, now I twist, and then it becomes a supply side policy questions. So read the question properly to know that what is being asked. Very interesting. You see, from the initial tax, I relate to exchange rate diagram. Now we play smart a bit, we study smart a bit, we relate to ADS diagram. Very, very good. Do you realize that by doing this revision, okay, how many graphs we had learned? We actually cover all the graph already. Do you realize that? Let me show you. We cover what? Okay, let's see. We cover ADS diagram. Correct? Done. Keynesian income graph, we cover. Done. Monetary policy, we do the expansionary one, and I give you the homework to do the contractionary one. We also done. ADS and also the Phillips curve, we also done. Okay, Phillips curve. Number 5, floating exchange rate graph, done. Then, fixed exchange rate graph, we also done. You realize that these are the graph that we had already completed so far? Basically everything ready. These lessons, I mean, this video is so good, right? I purposely spent time to do this video to make this lesson during my free time. Is really because that this is my last lesson at the university already. So I really appreciate getting to know you all. So this is something that I do uh, before I leave the university. So I hope that really that's going to be very helpful. I'm still a bit quite worried, like some of you, the basics are not so good. So therefore, I hope that this video can really help to some extent. At least you master very well for the calculations and the graph drawing parts. Okay. So you see from here, you cover a majority of the graph already. The basic one, the important all cover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 already. Really, really impressive. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video though. I'm really hoping that you all can do well in the exams. Yeah, thank you so much for joining the classes all this while. I also learned a lot from you all, and I had a fun time having classes with you all. Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoy, teaching economics. Yeah, so micro and macro. So yeah, so this is why I'm really willing to spend time to work on this video specifically for your revision purposes, because we don't have time to do any revision at all in class because we still have lessons going on. We still have tutorials to cover. So definitely there's no time to do revision. And by right, I'm just a tutor, so I can't do any revision in class also. So therefore, this is why I spend time to do this revision, which I really, really hope that it's going to be helpful for you all, so that at least weak students can pass, and then average students can score better, and then the good students can score better grades. So uh, yeah, I had a very fun time teaching you all. Thank you so much for this while. Yeah, and thanks for some of you who always demand me to go makan also. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah. So yeah, after this uh probably I will start my another new chapter of my life already. So may our path cross again in the future. Let's keep in touch and hope that we still have chance uh to catch up. Yeah. And yeah. Okay, and I hope that you all don't feel that that this subject was so hard, so that you feel demotivated. But I hope that you do not have this kind of mindset. Like life is way harder than this subject, right? So I feel that sometimes some weak students may feel that these subjects may be too challenging, so they may not like it. They may hate me. So I hope that it will not I hope you do not have this kind of mindset. I think at the end, it's still doable. Okay, try to master those easy concepts so at least you can score. Lor. Yeah, so that's all I want to talk about for today's video. I hope that these videos will be helpful for you all. Okay, thank you so much for watching the videos. Yeah. Okay, so I will stop my sharing. Thank you so much for watching also. Yeah. Okay.